With me now is Ben Wittes. He's the senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, editor-in-chief of Lawfare, and an MSNBC legal analyst. Let me put up the first expert here on Comey's responsibility, according to the IG report, Ben. By not safeguarding sensitive information obtained during the course of his FBI employment and by using it to create public pressure for official action, Comey set a dangerous example for the over 35,000 current FBI employees and the many thousands more former FBI employees who similarly have access to or knowledge of non-public information. It's clear the IG is basically saying here, he went outside his, call it a chain of command in this case, I guess you could, it's some form of that. And by not doing that, if others did the same thing, the FBI would lose its credibility in a heartbeat. Is that not a fair critique?
Well, so I think under normal circumstances it might be, but let's consider what the sensitive information that the IG is referring to there. Mm-hmm. The sensitive information is that the President of the United States tried to shut down an investigation of his national security advisor. And that is the information that the IG is critiquing Comey for making public. And so I think you have to ask the question, once you've been fired, you are now, at this point, you're not just the former director of the FBI, you're also a witness to, really gross misconduct that may be criminal. So what are you, is the IG really saying, and I think, by the way, that he is really saying, that if you are a law enforcement officer who's a witness to potentially criminal activity, you got to shut up?
Even if you're the FBI director. By the way, I want to put up, we played the president's response. I want to put up James Comey's tweets responding to this morning. He said the IG report, quote, found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information contained in any of the memos to members of the media. I don't need a public apology from those who defame me, he writes. But a quick message with a sorry we lied about you would be nice. And then Comey tweets another one. And to all those who've spent 2 years talking about me going to jail or being, quote, a liar and a leaker, ask yourselves why you still trust people who gave you bad info for so long, including the president. A lot of people have strong opinions about Bill Barr. And it is interesting to me that people are saying, oh, look, it's George H.W.'s Bill Barr instead of Donald Trump's Bill Barr in choosing not to criminally prosecute. Let's set that aside. But no matter what you think of Bill Barr, the fact that he did not, decide to prosecute, that's not a small deal, right?
Well, I think
considering what the president had promised and all of those things.
Look, I think there was no case here.
Right, that's my point. If he could have at least had an illusion of a case, the theory goes he probably would have at least started an investigation.
Well, and so I think that is the Andrew McCabe situation, right, where there's enough of a factual predicate that maybe you can think about bringing a case.
Right.
And they're thinking about bringing a case.
Against McCabe.
McCabe.
They couldn't find it here.
Here, there's just no material to work with. Mm-hmm. You have two classified memos that are never retained. They are left at the FBI. You have a bunch of other memos, some of which are retroactively found to maybe have some information at the confidential level. A court, by the way, has recently ruled that those were erroneous classifications except as to one single word.
You know what's interesting in reading this report is if you didn't know, if you weren't familiar with what he wrote in his memos, if you weren't familiar with what was happening in the moment in time, it was written in such a way you would think that that these memos were even a bigger deal than they were. I don't know how else to put it. It felt overwritten at times, the report. It was as if he should have been criminally prosecuted. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They wrote it in such a way almost like they were hoping for more punishment.
So
I can't figure that out.
I actually agree with that, I think, but it's only the last few pages.
It's just rhetoric. It's the way it's written. So the facts don't back it up.
Right. So this is a 62-page report. 52 of these pages are a dry recitation of the facts. They're quite fair. Everything you need to know in order to make a reasonable judgment is there. The last 10 pages are kind of chest-beating howl of rage. And I don't know how to explain that. I don't think the first 52 pages remotely supports the last 10 pages. And I think, Inspector General Mike Horowitz may have come to regret having written this.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a former FBI director who announced the decision not to prosecute a former Secretary of State and at the same time lectured her. It felt, and I'm setting that aside, but it felt like Comey was getting a taste of that medicine, which is, look, there's nothing here, but I'm going to lecture you loudly so that people don't think I'm one way or the other.
Right. So I think I think there's something to that, you know, that there's a kind of an anger reflected in this document at Comey for having said, hey, we're in an extraordinary situation.
Right.
I just had a set of wildly inappropriate interactions with the president. I'm going to make the rules work for me, and you know, which other people will say means bend or break the rules. And I think this is the sort of establishment Justice Department view, saying, "Oh no, you don't.
Right.
That's not proper."
Did you? What I was surprised at, he didn't seem to address enough of what do you do when you're in this situation of a sitting president.
Yeah, I think that's the key question.
He seemed to punt on
because
that.
Well, he says basically Comey had other avenues, you know, within the chain of command. And what are those other avenues? You've just been fired as FBI director.
You had a recused attorney general, right?
You have a recused attorney general. Do you go to Rod Rosenstein, who just helped fire you, who's, by the way, tweeting piously today about how people should follow the rules strictly? Do you go to Rod Rosenstein? Do you go to the president, who's, you know, one step up from that, who is responsible for this activity? And so what are the rules? And so what Comey decides to do is, I have these memos. I'm going to give them to my lawyers to help me figure out how to handle it. And I'm going to give the substance of one of them to the New York Times. And that substance of one of them, which he gives through his friend Dan Richman, says the president tried to shut down a major federal investigation. And that's what he's being criticized for.
Well, it was one of those cases, it felt like the report was trying to give something to both sides of something, which is always, again, I think James Comey himself found that. You try to please everybody, you're going to please nobody.
And I think Mike Horowitz probably pleased nobody today.
Ben Wittes, thank you, sir. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.